All right, welcome back to SwitchCast Live. Yep, that is official. Our name is SwitchCast. I am your host, Doug Tabbutt. I'm the founder of Switchcars, GT Vault, and two-time overall Cannonball record holder. That's right, no qualifiers there. My goal on SwitchCast is to never be the smartest guy in the room. Maybe the fastest guy, for sure. Definitely the most humble. But Andrew Carnegie once suggested that his epitaph should read, "Here lies a man who is able to surround himself with men far cleverer than himself." So I want to surround myself on this show with experts. Some of them you may have never heard of, but they are the unsung, unknown heroes and experts of the car industry, and they're going to be here offering their wisdom. So you and I are going to learn together, unless that is if you're inquiring about Porsche GT cars, cannonballing, or song parodies, and then we will all be attending the Doug Tabbutt School of Higher Learning. So call in. That's right. This is a live call-in show. Call in to 216-294-4124 or post your questions in the comment flow wherever you are watching this live. The number again is 216-294-4124. My guest tonight is Sean Petr. Petr, I barely know her. Oh, yes, we are off to a really good start. The last podcast it took an hour. Took an hour to get there. This is going to be a good one. Sean set the diesel cannonball record in a TDI Passat in April of 2020. His time was 28 hours and 30 minutes. That is incredibly fast. Sean, give me a 100-foot flyover of yourself and the record run so we can get into the questions, because there are a lot of them.
All right. Well, yeah. So I'm originally a Maryland native. Grew up in Annapolis. Big fan of the Chesapeake Bay, seafood, all of that good stuff. Crabs, love them. Unfortunately, I was suckered into moving into Ohio in 2003 by a president of a company who said that the winters in Ohio were just like Maryland, only a little bit longer, and that was a big fat lie. So moved here, ended up with a family, some kids, bought a house, and been here ever since, and then grown to like it.
Stuck in Ohio, as they say.
Yeah, stuck in Ohio. Man, when I saw those stickers on the backs of cars, I thought, man, somebody is a marketing genius. Absolutely. So, yeah, so here I am. And as far as the Cannonball stuff goes, that all started in 2017. Actually, 2016, I was on a road trip and read about Ed Bolian breaking Alex Roy's record. I didn't even know Alex Roy had a record at that point. I just knew the myth and the movie, and I knew that it was based off something real, but I didn't know that anybody had actually done it recently. And I was halfway through Wisconsin on my way to Minneapolis for a pastor's conference, believe it or not. And I'm reading this article on Jalopnik, and I said, oh my gosh, people are still doing this. Like, it just blew me away.
My brother-in-law forwarded me that same article.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was super disappointed that I wasn't in the car.
Yeah.
It's sort of new Ed at the time. And
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So that kind of sparked the fire, and just kind of started my search, because it mentioned some people who I had found online, people who ran the 2904 and the C2C Express. And so I reached out to them and was eventually invited to participate. And for the first 2 years, 2017 and 2018, that I knew about it, I couldn't participate. Just work was involved. Family kind of prevented me from making that step.
All the usual excuses.
All of them, yeah. But in 2019, all those excuses were gone. I was not making any more excuses. It was time for a little bit of Sean time, and I had the passion, and I contacted Ben, who runs the C2C Express, and I said, hey, you keep mentioning that people need co-drivers. I go, you're going to get me in trouble. You keep mentioning this, because I can't afford to, form my own team, but I'll hop in somebody's right seat. So,
okay, for people who don't know, who have heard the word Cannonball, what in the world is the C2C Express?
So the C2C Express is a great event that ran for 5 years in cars that are pre-1981. So they are time period correct for the Cannonball. It's a $3,000 budget on the purchase price of the car. Safety modifications not included there. And then
unlimited budget for modifications.
Unlimited,
I found that
as
loophole.
many have proven, at least the man on my
Alter
right.
beige.
So you start in Darien, Connecticut, where in years previous to that, you started at Red Ball, the traditional starting point for the Cannonball. And in 1979, the Cannonball started at the Good Wives Shopping Center in Darien, Connecticut. So that's where we started in 2019. You were there.
Yep.
And
so it's a tribute race with period correct cheap cars.
that's a great way to put it. Yes, much more succinct.
Terrible time.
I was headed. Yes.
It's all good. All right, so we have tons of questions. So many people want to know about cannonballing. And the goal of the format of this show is not primarily to be an interview, but to be an interaction. We're here to answer questions and help you on your automotive journey. So we're going to get into the questions, but what I will say is all the questions we have from social media in advance, we'll try to get through as many as we can. However, if you call in live or ask your questions live where you're watching, you do get priority because we are our goal is to interact with the people who are here with us live, not just answer preloaded questions. So call in. The number is 216-294-4124. With that said, we are going to get right into the questions and see if I can keep all of them straight here. But we're gonna just go with it. One of the first questions somebody noticed on your car was the blue line plate.
Yep.
Vinny Russo asked this. He asked simply, blue line plate to avoid police?
All right. Well, Vinny, I appreciate the question. So nothing on my car that was pro law enforcement was to avoid police. The avoiding the police was hopefully in the discretion of the vehicle we used, the laser jammers, the radar detector ways, those kinds of things. The blue line plate, and if you would have seen at the time, also on my trunk, I had removed the Volkswagen emblem from the trunk lid and replaced that with a thin blue line American flag emblem. Really was for after the fact that we were noticed by police that hopefully we would be a little bit more easygoing on us, I guess. And really, we were supporting law enforcement. So when the C2C Express, the 2904, all of these organizations involve some form of law enforcement. In fact, there was a team on the C2C Express who was pure law enforcement.
Yep.
And they had an organization called the Cannonball Memorial Run.
Mm-hmm.
So while we were on our run, we were actually raising money for them as well.
Yep.
And
what the Cannonball Memorial Run and the Blue Line organization does, there's a lot of misunderstanding, I think, about the Blue Line organization. Not to get into politics here, but what they do is they raise funds and awareness for surviving spouses of officers killed in the line of duty. So it's not a political organization. It is purely a support organization for officers killed in the line of duty and their families.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what makes it so easy to support, because you really can pour your heart out for those who have lost a loved one killed in the line of duty. Mm-hmm. And so that's part of what we did. And so to represent that, we ran the Cannonball Memorial Run stickers on the car, along with the license plate and the emblem on the back.
Does it work? Like, if you get pulled over...
You want that story now?
Sure. I asked if it worked.
So on the way back from completing the run, Mark Spence, my spotter, and I, we drove the car back from California. And rather than taking the same route back, which would have been faster, we actually decided, hey, let's see some country we haven't seen yet. So we went up through Vegas.
Which is all of it when you're going at that speed.
So we went through Vegas, up to Salt Lake City, around Salt Lake City, up into Evanston, Wyoming, and stayed the night there. And the next morning, our good friend Denny had said, hey, you can stay at my cabin in Iowa tonight if you can make it here in time. And so that was 1,000 miles we had to cover in a day. And I said, well, if we can do 100 miles an hour, it's 10 hours of driving. That's nothing.
I can see where this is going.
So it's 7 a.m. against Mark's better judgment. I put my foot down, and we had seen so much false KA radar in California that we thought, okay, this KA we're getting hit with on the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, is false. Didn't see the state trooper anywhere. And And so it wasn't false. As we're going down the bottom of one hill, I see him cresting over the hill behind us, and we get pulled over, and I just praying that he doesn't ask us to pop the trunk and look at this 27-gallon fuel cell full of diesel. So he, pulls us over. I hand him the FOP card. I hand him the FOP lawyer card. He goes, well, what's this? And hands it right back to me, and I go, this is not going to go good.
I've had those.
Goes and writes the ticket and brings it back, and he sticks his head in. It was very Super Trooper-esque. He looks in, and he looks around, and he goes, that's the fanciest radar detector I've ever seen. Not fancy enough. So, no, we got no sympathy from him whatsoever, from any of the emblems on our car.
Yeah. Sometimes I think there is sympathy. Sometimes maybe a ticket at the speeds we are going is... only a ticket is the best sympathy we can get.
Yeah, absolutely.
I say that from experience, alleged experience. From Tyler Engram, what is the best way to get started into cannonballing? It's to go really slow, right, Sean?
That's
is that
right.
Your first foray?
Yeah. Well, what I would say, my first foray was really slow. It would be to find a group, an organization of fun-loving people that want to do this for fun. When we set out in the diesel, in the Passat, we never set out to set a record. We were going to go have fun, just like we did with the C2C Express. Sure. So that's really it. Is find a group of people who are like you, who are interested in this kind of thing, who want to put the work and the effort into making the car safe, who are going to put the work and effort into planning properly. Because this is not something that we take lightly. I mean, the amount of preparation and the months of preparation that go into planning a single run is really all to keep it completely 100% as safe as we can.
Except for the guy in the R8.
Except for that guy. Jeez.
There is a guy in an R8, the story's on VinWiki, who decided during the COVID shutdown that his strategy was going to be to take an R8 that was still wrapped in like gold foil whatever graphics from a rally and had a license plate that said Trump 20 and cannonball this R8 across country by himself with a radar detector and Waze. And his strategy for staying awake was to smoke cigars the whole time.
Right.
Needless to say, he didn't make it past Missouri without being in trouble with the police. We have a couple questions from the live stream.
Yeah.
For an amateur, obviously beating GPS at 42 hours is a win. But what's a good time to shoot for to be good? I assume under 35, but that's just a guess, or is it just have fun and finish? I mean, you kind of already answered that. It's to have fun, be safe, and finish, and kind of beat your own personal goal.
And by no means are we the arbitrators of what's a good time. Because it's really based on well, you might be, okay.
I might be.
So it's really based on the effort you put in, right? So any modern car can really cruise at a high speed pretty easily. We proved that with a 170 horsepower turbo diesel.
Mm-hmm.
So, but right now with the way traffic is, with the way the infrastructure is and everything else, if you're going to go out and you're going to do it for the first time, anytime under 40 hours is really good. And, the closer you get to 35, you should be really proud of yourself. Again, to get to 35, it's the preparation. You got to make the car safe. You got to make the plan practical, and you got to keep the other drivers on the road in mind. Yeah,
that's a good answer. I won't go into that story. Ethan, I think when you give me these questions, you need to give me their names because I totally want to call this guy out, girl, whatever. Isn't Richard Rawlings the fastest cannonballer? I think they're trolling.
I'd like to know who sent that. His tattoo proves that he is, right? I mean,
yeah, right. From Mr. Oscar May, this is a question I don't know how to answer. If you're running behind schedule, should you turn back and try again tomorrow or keep going?
Listen, you don't know how to answer this question? If your exhaust falls off, you should definitely go back to the start, reattach it,
running behind,
and start over. So the short answer is how far have you made it? Okay, Are you past Connecticut? Well, that's if you're starting in Darien. Are you past New Jersey? Are you already into Pennsylvania? Well, I mean, how serious of an effort are you making? Is this for fun? Is this for experience? Are you trying to have a story to tell?
That's a good answer. And our first C2C, our transmission blew up in Indiana in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And we decided that we were going to finish and not go home. It would have been really easy to go home. We were like 3 hours from Cleveland.
Yeah.
And we got an Uber in the middle of the night in the middle of nowhere in Indiana. That's, you don't get to choose how many stars your Uber driver has at that point. You just hope that they've had less drinks and they have stars. But we stayed overnight until we could get a rental car in the morning, and we finished. And we still did it in like 44 hours or something like that.
I was going to say
an overnight stay. So all that to say, finishing was one of the best things we ever did. We decided not to accept defeat. But
well, listen to this. I mean, do you remember what happened with Rob Zappa and his Fire Am?
Yeah.
He made it to the start. He built this car, purpose built for this, his dream car, made it to the start, and then blew a tire out somewhere early in the run, shredded his fender and everything. And he was really disheartened. And there was quite a few of us who were texting him like, just get on a plane and get to California. Now, he didn't drive the whole run, but he still completed it and got to California and celebrated with us because he was a participant. So participating is huge. So it's really what you feel.
Yeah. Finish, and then try again.
Yeah.
We're gonna go to the calls here. Michael from Birmingham. He's got a good question here. So let's see here. Michael, you are online with myself and Sean. What's your question?
Gentlemen, I would like to know your most miserable experiences on your runs. And do you look back and laugh at those, or do you look back and cringe?
That is a good question. I've had a number of miserable experiences in Ultra Beige. In fact, most of it was miserable. The exhaust falling off, the other exhaust falling off halfway across the country, bolts falling out, the AC not working, getting carbon monoxide poisoning halfway through California because the exhaust had fallen off, transmission going out in Indiana. I mean, we have been on the side of the road so much.
That's it?
What was the second part of your question? Why do we do this?
Do you look back and laugh, or, do you cringe and wonder, why do I enjoy doing this?
I honestly, I think we cringe. I think we all really want the perfect run, because even the perfect run is incredibly grueling and difficult. I don't think Alex Roy overstated it in his book when he talked about kind of where people were at the 30-hour mark, and how you wanted to quit, you never wanted to do it again, and then you get there and you have this sense of elation at this massive accomplishment. So no, I don't look back on my miserable experiences and say, man, that was really cool. In hindsight, I look back and go, I wish I had the perfect run. But I think it makes you a better cannonballer. Yeah,
I mean, we all know that we can look back and say, hey, we left time on the table. But as far as experiences that happened while we were running, it's funny because I've got my co-driver here who, as soon as that question was asked, looked up at me, and we all both kind of laughed at each other. But, there's a couple things. One, somewhere in the middle of the Midwest, and I can't remember what city it was somewhere in Nebraska. I mean, we had a deer that was 3 inches from the driver's side A-pillar. And Jason was driving. He was doing an alleged speed of well over 120. And I had my head down looking at social media or something. I don't even remember exactly. But the whole car just shifted 5 feet one way and 5 feet back the other. And it really, that was a scary moment. And Jason was like on pins and needles from that point. 100% adrenaline. Outside of that,
so you went from tweeting to twerking.
Yes, he's here all night, folks. Tip your waiters.
I'm keeping track.
Yeah, so that was one experience that was very I don't know, horrible. I don't know if that's the right word. The other is for me is heading through the Rocky Mountains. Now the elevation there kills you. And at the time, my car was still...
It kills you.
It did kill me.
We
yes.
had 800 horsepower.
Yes, I did not. So at the time, I didn't know my car very well. And that sounds strange, cannonballing it across country, but there were just certain things about a Volkswagen, a TDI with a DSG transmission that I just didn't understand. And so we had some conversation in the car about how hard we push this transmission. And so when you got into the Rockies, my little 170 horsepower turbo diesel went down to 70 miles an hour from Denver all the way through to Utah.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time we could make up.
Yeah.
And had I known then what I know now, which is that these DSG transmissions are bulletproof and they can handle 350, 400 horsepower, no problem. So for me to have manually downshifted that to keep the revs up a little higher, to keep the speed a little higher, yeah, I look back on that and that's a cringe for me.
Sure. Learning from experience. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Michael, for the call. Appreciate your question. We're going to go to Dominic from Chicago. Dominic, what's your question?
Oh, hey. Well, Sean, it's Dominic. You remember me?
Yeah. What's going on, man?
I'm actually driving right now. I got you on the earbuds, so it's all safe.
Good.
My question is, possibly in the future, if time allows, would you be interested in setting a record with a hybrid vehicle? Because I don't know if one exists, because I'm about to purchase one. I was trying to think about maybe doing something fun with this thing in the near future.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations on what you're about to purchase. I know you've been looking for a car for a while, and that's awesome. As far as a hybrid record, is there a hybrid record, Doug? I mean, I know
yes. Timothy,
yeah,
the sticker guy,
right,
used a Prius in one of the C2Cs.
He
it wasn't
did, yeah.
an official
right. What was his
car.
name? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I'm sorry,
Okay,
Tim. It was less than 40 hours, so
yeah. So I mean,
there is one, I guess.
So I'll tell you this, Dominic, just like I tell everybody is one, I'm always interested in going for a drive. Two, life sometimes gets in the way, right? So if the work schedule lines up and the finances are there, hit me up, man. You know my Facebook account. Just shoot me a message. Let me know when you're ready.
There's no hybrids under 32 hours.
Well,
I think.
Okay, all right. And the one that might be in my possession is Honda Civic hybrid. So
okay, well that's a pretty bulletproof car.
Right.
Sean is used to going fast in slow cars, so you guys will be perfect together. I think we'll rename the show like Cannonball Matchmaking or something
that's
tonight.
exactly
yeah,
right.
So,
Thanks, Dominic.
all right, thank you, Dominic, for the call. I appreciate it. Drive safe.
You got it.
All right, we've got Sean from Canada. I think I know who this might be.
Yes.
Maybe. Sean, how's it going?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
How goes the battle?
Oh, yeah.
What do you say?
How goes the battle?
How goes the battle?
Yeah, great. We're winning.
Yes.
That's always good. Okay,
Yeah.
I have a question for Sean.
Yeah.
From the other Sean. I observed you driving at breakneck speeds across the country. And
This sounds
I pulled
creepy.
up a traffic camera.
Yes, I just posted that video
getting
today to my
The
Facebook.
Colorado mountains.
Yeah.
And I watched you roll past a RAV4 at about a mile per hour difference.
Yeah.
And I was standing yelling at my computer, go faster.
Okay. Well, you know who was yelling with you was Jason in the back seat.
And all of us watching
So
on
can you talk
Glimpse.
about the idea, when I hear people, I talk about Cannonball with my friends, and they'll go, oh, dude, you know what you need to do? You need to get a diesel, bro. So can you explain to me, as somebody who's done that,
Yeah.
is a diesel the best option?
So I think I have to go by what's been proven and say no. However, I have a 4-cylinder, 2-liter, 170 horsepower diesel, and there are bigger, more powerful diesels. There's a V10, there's a 3.0 V6, and there's quite a lot of horsepower and torque that can be harnessed out of those. What you gain with a diesel that you give up a little bit with a gas-powered vehicle is the fuel economy. The fuel economy and the torque, which really, in the past, I think people thought that diesels wouldn't have the horsepower to do the run because you couldn't get up to speed in time. But really, we proved just the opposite. I mean, my car, although it only has 170 horsepower, you just breathe on the throttle, and it's passing whatever's in front of it. So if you had one of those bigger displacement engines, more turbos, etc., yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the diesel. Just the fuel economy alone gives you a slight advantage if your vehicle doesn't weigh too much and isn't too wind resistant. So somebody like yourself, I think, that has the mechanical knowledge and ability and can put the work in, yeah, I think it's a great advantage.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Thank you for the call, Sean. Good to hear from you.
For sure, guys. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
See you, man.
Have a good one.
Take care.
Following up on that question, guy on Instagram, Silver BM9, I think that's an internal Subaru lingo. How many miles per hour did the Passat get, and how many fuel stops were required? Or I guess it's desired versus required, right?
Yeah. So overall, we averaged 25.5 miles per gallon. We had an 18-gallon factory tank, and we had a 27-gallon auxiliary tank that fed the factory tank as we needed it to. The issue that we had, because when we were planning, we planned for 3 fuel stops.
Mm-hmm.
First one, I don't even want to quote where they were supposed to be, but because I'm going to be off, it's been so long. But we were supposed to have 3. We thought we could do it with 3 fuel stops, and ideally, had everything gone according to plan, that would have worked. When I originally built the car and I built a fuel transfer system, I used a fuel filter from the auxiliary tank to the main tank that flowed at a much higher rate. And then the night before the run, I'm up at 3 o'clock in the morning making modifications to the car and realizing that the fuel filters that I have are not rated for diesel. And whether they would have worked or not, I don't know, but all I could picture was particulate matter going through my fuel system and shutting us down in Oklahoma. And I said, you know what? You had always told me the one problem with cannonballing is fuel systems.
Yeah.
It's the one issue you're going to have.
Yep.
And so I went to Summit Racing down in Talmadge, and I purchased 2 diesel-rated fuel filters and put that in line, and it flowed at such a massively slower rate that our calculations were all off. We couldn't be accurate when we were doing the run, and so instead of 3 stops, I think we did 6.
Oh.
It really was. It was. And in fact, at one point,
How much time do you think that cost you? Because we all love looking back
at least a half hour, 45 minutes. And the problem is because we discovered that problem early in the run at our first fuel stop on the Ohio Turnpike. Jason, my co-driver, being the mechanical whiz that he is, just went into the trunk, went into the fuel filter, removed removed the filter media, and just made it essentially a barb fitting. So it free flowed. So we had no longer the filter between the auxiliary tank and the factory tank. So now we're flowing at a much faster rate than we ever anticipated. And if you ever see the pictures that I've posted of the car at the finish line, the entire right quarter panel and trunk and bumper are just covered in black. And it looks like the car's been through a war zone. And you're like, yeah, it did the work. But really all that is just diesel fuel and road debris that it picked up along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. I didn't know that, but I mean, I knew your fuel troubles. I didn't know that about the picture. So,
Yeah.
A couple more live questions. I think these are quick ones. Are there any records that haven't been announced? I don't think so. The motorcycle and the new electric EV record were announced recently. There's no new overall record. There's some qualified records, I guess, what we call them, consolation records, whatever.
Yeah.
That people are keeping quiet, but they won't ever be announced. But there's nothing faster than 2539 that we know of.
Right.
I guess there might be another diesel record. We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
I think that's a good topic. Oh boy. Thoughts on mobile refueling.
It's good in the movies.
Yeah, we're just going to leave it at that. It's good in the movies. None of us have done it yet, and there's a reason. That's the internet. That's Reddit's answer to how to beat the Cannonball record is mobile refueling, but it's not the answer. Okay, we're going to go to our first commercial, which is me just talking again. This wonderful Switchcast is brought to you by Boxcast. Boxcast is a live streaming company based here in Cleveland, Ohio, and they serve broadcasters and viewers in more than 200 countries. Their founders launched Boxcast back in 2013 with one purpose, to make people part of the experience. If you're looking to live stream your podcast, church service, car show, sporting event, wedding, or even your cannonball attempt, Boxcast is an easy, flexible live streaming platform for organizations. It's so easy. We are doing this with a cell phone. So if you love what you see here, it's thanks to Boxcast. If you don't, it's my producer's fault or your Wi-Fi or our Wi-Fi or user error or, Donald Trump. So head over to switchcars.com/Boxcast for your free trial. Switchcars.com/Boxcast for a free trial. So if you're watching us, you can call in 216-294-4124 or post your questions in the comment flow wherever you are watching live. We'll do our best to get to your questions this evening. We have a live in-studio guest. I think we all know who this is. This is Mark, who's the spotter for Sean's run, and he has a good question. Come on, Mark.
Well, I thank you for having me. My biggest question is 5-hour energy or chocolate-covered cocoa beans for your snacks on the runs?
Yeah, so Fred Ashmore famously put it in his response to that kind of question is the less you put in, the less that comes out, right? So small little 5-hour energies are great. Chocolate-covered espresso beans are wonderful. So to answer Mark's question, one or the other, the answer is yes. Whatever works best for you.
Yeah. For me, the answer is definitely chocolate-covered coffee beans.
Yeah.
I can't really do caffeine. It messes with my stomach and head and all sorts of things. So I take very small intakes, and the chocolate-covered coffee beans are perfect because it's a tiny amount, and I want to maintain rather than take some big shot of energy and then crash.
I think the one thing to note here is with the 5-hour energies is that you cannot add them together over the course of a run. So 5-hour energies does not equal a 25-hour run. It equals a heart attack. We need to keep that in mind.
I don't know because I've never tried and never will. Oh, man. If you could have only one radar detector, which one would it be and why? From Ty Picard. I don't know if we can answer this because we're not sponsored by one yet. Or I guess we can answer it because we're not sponsored.
Yeah. So I love Uniden. I love Uniden. So I have an R7.
Mm-hmm. As do I.
And man, I know there are better ones. I know there are better, integrated, built-in kits. But as far as a standalone radar detector goes with active upgrades and updates and support, I just don't know what else is out there that you're not going to spend thousands of dollars on.
Yeah. So I have the Uniden R7. I'm not a huge fan. I think it's a very good detector, but the Escort Max 360 or the Escort Redline just works better.
Yeah.
The software that's in those my unit at least, the GPS software is very slow to respond, very finicky. There's a lot of false signals. The software just doesn't process as quickly. The Escort Max 360, I rarely get false signals.
Okay.
And there's a big debate between V1 and everyone else.
Right.
The big difference between those being the GPS filtering. I am
Sure.
100% all about GPS filtering. I disagree with the reason that Valentine doesn't use it. I think you have to have GPS filtering, but then from there it becomes about what radar detector you're comfortable with. Because if you are using Escort with the JBV1 app and that works for you, great. If you know your Uniden really well, a radar detector is a relationship, right?
That's exactly
you know its quirks and how it responds to false signals versus real signals, and that's the best one you can have, is the one that you understand and get along with.
Yeah, and people ask me all the time, why do you run your radar detector all the time, even when you're not doing a cannonball? And the answer is really, like you just said, so you learn it. You know it. When you don't have it, you feel naked without it.
Right.
So it's it's absolutely a relationship.
Yeah. This question is from John in Denver. Did you know that there was a secret cannonball where a bunch of dignitaries and world leaders participated?
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not.
Yeah. Mussolini was totally the fascist driver.
This is why I come here.
I'll be here all night. Tip your bartenders extravagantly. Okay, so back to the question, are there any records that haven't been announced? I'm going to go down a road that's interesting, I think, anyway.
Yes.
So there are some records that have been claimed, talked about, whatever, that don't have proof. There's a lot of records that don't have proof. There's some that people don't want made public. They just did them to do them.
Yeah.
One of them is a eco-diesel Ram.
Allegedly,
that ran last year, and they ran around 28 hours flat. Allegedly. Again, they haven't announced it. They haven't claimed it, right?
Yeah.
So, two questions for you. Does a record count if it's not claimed? And that goes way back to the Alex Roy versus Richard Rawlings debate, because if you're into the nuances of this, Alex Roy went faster than Richard Rawlings before Richard Rawlings went. So Richard Rawlings never technically had a record, but Alex Roy held his record, kept it a secret for a year for the alleged statute of limitations or fear of them, whereas Richard Rawlings came out with it immediately. So technically, I guess Richard Rawlings was the record holder because it was the announced record.
Yeah.
And then secondly, what about if there's no proof? Alex Roy had, I got a lot of evidence, as he says. Richard Rawlings has a tattoo and a Ferrari with stickers on it.
Yeah.
So question one, does a record count if it's not claimed?
All right, so I'm going to go way back on this one because history matters and these records do matter, and whether you're into all the subcategories and all that stuff, it doesn't matter. But so, even back in the 80s and the 70s, the times mattered to the people who ran them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you sit down and have a conversation with some of the older guys that have done this, as I have, they'll tell you the same stories that we hear about today, where guys have posting these, or telling these stories about these times that they've ran, but something just doesn't line up, or there's no proof, or whatever, and it's just as I don't know, disheartening is the word, I'm not sure, to them from their era as it is for us today. So the U.S. Express, the Cannonball, and so if you do it, it matters to you.
Sure.
Okay.
And this run only mattered to that guy.
And
so
that,
he's
and
not trying to claim anything. I'm just,
and that's
this
wonderful.
is a good example of.
And if it's legit, let me tell you something. If it's legit, that's awesome. I got a guy right now who is building a BMW 355D specifically to beat my record. I've met him. I've seen
imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
I've met him. I've seen the car. He's having some tuning issues right now, but he's a wonderful guy. I wish him all the best. And you know what? I'm going to spot for him when he does his run, because I don't mind that somebody else out there has it. If this gentleman beat our time, that's fantastic. I'd love to shake his hand and hear the story.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Do you think they count if there's no proof?
No. But does any of this count? Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, I guess, because there's the Cannonball community that cares about proof and all of that, and then there's the greater world that often doesn't. I mean,
Yeah.
you look back at Richard Rawlings' record, nobody's asked him for proof. Granted, when he didn't do it, there wasn't a standard of evidence because nobody had done it at all for 30 years.
Yeah.
But you're right, going back to the 80s and the 70s, there was controversy over alleged falsified or exaggerated runs, and we have that today. So,
Yeah. It doesn't matter. Not to us. Not to us. Because there is no proof, like you said. It's like the gentleman who broke down in Missouri in the R8. Supposedly there was a slew of cops and et cetera, but yet there's no evidence of that. So
Right.
so we kind of laugh at these things. This guy with the Ecotech, all I've ever heard is a couple people saying to me, hey, have you heard about this Ecotech? But he knows whether that's true or not.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
yeah.
What about the people claiming loudly that don't have proof?
No, that doesn't matter at all. Anybody can do that. That's what the internet's all about, right?
Okay. All right. We won't go too far down that road. Can you folks explain the Richard Rawlings hate? I kind of think we just did. It's not that we hate him. I legitimately think he did it. There's
to carry it on this long, as brashly as they have, to get a tattoo and to not have done it seems a little ridiculous.
right. I think he's an easy target because he is a vibrant personality.
Right.
He maybe makes a little bit of easy target of himself, and there's a lot of people who really don't believe he did it. And I think that I think it's just an easy joke.
Here's the thing,
Maybe.
though. If you've never read the book The Drive by Alex Roy, it's very easy to fall into the mocking trap, as it is online to do to anybody who makes claim about anything.
Yeah.
But when you understand his character of who he was during the gumball rallies and his assistance to the other drivers and the way that he carried himself then, you would hope to think that he still carried that in when he supposedly set this record.
Right.
So you give him the benefit of the doubt and you say, okay. But then, of course, Alex Roy already had the record, and there's that.
Right. To do Cannonball, you have to have some screws loose to start with.
Yes.
So us talking trash about other cannonballers is usually just because we think they're more screwed up than we are. But if you look at Richard Rawlings or Alex Roy, both of them are very strong personalities, very out there people.
Yeah.
And I don't think either one will deny it. And I think that's part of it is Alex Roy had a lot of I don't know if animosity is the right word towards Richard Rawlings, but there was some headbutting there, and they're both very strong personalities.
Yeah.
Both had a lot of media attention, so I think that was maybe just fuel for the fire. Along those lines, a good question we got was a lot of people want a record for notoriety or fame or whatever.
Yeah.
Have you gotten famous? You're on my podcast.
This is as famous as I've gotten. Yeah, no, not at all.
Okay. What are the drawbacks / long-term costs? That's a lot of things people don't think about. What are what's the other side of having your name out there associated with scofflaw activities?
All right, so first things first, unless you are the overall record holder, either solo or overall, your name's not going to get out there. So you really don't have a whole lot to worry about there too much. I do know of some people who have had job issues when their name is Googled and it comes up. But for me, that hasn't been the case.
But you can create that problem just by posting stupid stuff on Facebook.
That's true. The long-term effect for me was the ticket I received in Wyoming. I had to hire a lawyer out of state. I had to pay a prosecutor's much larger fee than it should have been so that it didn't translate into points and I didn't have to go to jail for a couple of days. And I'm a commercial truck driver. My license is my income. That's why I had to pay those extra fees in order to knock the offense down to where it didn't affect my ability to drive. Some people don't have that issue, so it's not a big deal. So you really got to weigh, what happens if you get pulled over in a state that doesn't share the interstate compact and you have to have thousands of dollars on you to post bail or you go to jail? Well, do you carry thousands of dollars on you, or do you go to jail? Well, these are things that people don't think about. That you just drive across the country.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, we're gonna go to the calls. Sorry to keep you all on hold for so long. I'm not from the South, but y'all is more efficient than something else. Tommy from the UK. We know this guy. Tommy, how's it going?
Not too bad, gents. It's very late over here, but I had to call in. You get me through my evening of emails, man.
Oh, good. We appreciate it and apologize at the same time. Surely you had better options. What's your question, Tommy?
I suppose it's interesting, going on from sort of the proof and Sean there speaking about, sort of jail and kind of lawyer fees and stuff. I suppose my question is for both of you guys, as you both sort of did astronomical kind of sub 30 times, was sort of covering your tracks sort of in your mind at the time? This sort of thing of trying to prove the record. Well, sometimes you may not want to prove it to certain people. Did you, like, for example, take your mobile phone, or were you sort of conscious of what if the law didn't look too kindly to this? Was there sort of a kind of a strategy for that?
Yeah. We set up a website live stream and had like 150 people watching. That was our strategy for covering our tracks.
Not the smartest.
Including a lot of cops who were off duty, maybe. Sean?
Yeah, the whole cell phone thing really didn't occur to me at all. And Tommy, to be honest with you, until your case came up in the UK, I hadn't really thought about anything other than, okay, we've got multiple drivers in the car, therefore you can't prove who was driving at the time. But the one thing that your defense over the issue that you had in the UK that I think about quite often, to be honest with you, is the whole, I made it up. If it's an after the fact type thing, there is always that defense, and bravo on the brilliance of that. To be honest with you, I think about that quite often. But no, the only thing that I had conscious knowledge of or effort of was I really shouldn't be swiping my credit card at fuel pumps across the country at this rate of speed because it's leaving a digital trail. But I didn't have any other better options. Cash was just too slow. We didn't know how much we'd be pumping, et cetera. So we just used the credit cards at the pumps. So no, we really didn't take too many precautions in that regard.
Yeah. I think this is actually a good a good example of why Cannonball is American.
Yeah.
For those of you watching, we know Tommy from the UK because he allegedly did a high-speed drive across the UK and had some legal repercussions for his alleged drive, which I guess didn't actually happen. Tommy's a two-faced liar and made the whole thing up. So
he's acquitted of all charges.
Yeah, right. But America, kind of the reason this started, or at least why Brock started it, was the call for freedom. The cry for freedom is, it was rebelling against overreaching governmental authority.
Absolutely.
And, state sovereignty still exists, and that's the beautiful thing about Cannonball, is there is no federal speeding law or federal government that's going to come after you for doing this stuff. You really the drive west is kind of that pursuit of freedom. It goes back to the gold rush, and I'm not doing this justice, but it is Cannonball is purely American, and that's kind of why we don't fear the repercussions. And I have a patch that I bought at an antique store, and I took it with me on our first record run. It was like my good luck charm or whatever. And it said, do it today, tomorrow it may be illegal. And what that meant to me is, it's kind of a joke because everything we're doing is illegal, but it's only illegal kind of if we get caught in the act. And we're always looking forward to the day that, we have a national police force or we have cameras everywhere and they start actually enforcing speed or setting up rules such that cannonballing does become impossible without a real fear of legal repercussions. And right now it's still pretty benign. Like if you get caught, they can charge you with what you get caught doing. But other than that, it's pretty much you can just go.
Yeah. Yeah, and the fact that there are states that are non-point states versus a state like Ohio where we have points, those things are, it's not really like you can factor them in, but it just kind of sits in the back of your mind like, look, we're not going to jail for 10 years for driving fast across the country. Right. Now, should something happen and we cause an issue, there could be that.
Sure.
But again, that all goes back to the planning.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Tommy. Great to hear from you. We'll let you get back to your emails or your laundry or whatever you were finding yourself doing that caused you to tune in to us. Thanks for the call. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks,
will we see you in November? Wink, wink.
It's going to have to be next 2022, I think. I'm going to bring my Audi over.
All right.
And we'll catch up on everything. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Same here. Looking forward to seeing you.
All right. Take care, gents. Thank you.
See ya. All right. We are going to go to the Switchcars question of the day. This podcast is brought to you by Switchcars. They have provided our studio. Switchcars is a wonderful, highly reputable, high-end car dealership here in Twinsburg, Ohio. If you're looking for a sweet car, or looking to sell your car, trade, or switch cars, give them a call, switchcars.com. And we have a wonderful merchandise store where we have T-shirts. We have Keep Your Woman But Switch Cars for the relationally monogamous ones among you who like to have lots of cars. We have Flatten the Curve for you sarcastic people and some Switch Cars T-shirts. You can go to shopswitchcars.com. Use code SwitchCast to get 10% off your merchandise order. So the Switchcars question of the day, which wins a free T-shirt and... Oh my goodness, one of Sean's 2830 stickers is Alex Aldworth. His question is, why a Passat and not a 535D A6 TDI Cayenne diesel?
This is my favorite question. Can I take a little time on this one?
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's the question of the day.
I don't know if it'll take a little bit of time, but you can ask some follow-ups on it. People ask me all the time, why the Volkswagen, right? And it's really just happenstance. I was in line at a gas station here locally, and I hear somebody say, "Hey, Sean, is that you?" And I turn around, and it's a guy that I used to go to church with. Well, he now works at a Volkswagen dealership right around the corner from this gas station. And so we ended up sitting down at the benches in front of the gas station and talking for like an hour and a half because we hadn't seen each other in so long and so much was going on in our lives. So at that time, my lease was up on my SUV, and I was looking at something to buy. I wanted something a little bit nicer than the 2005 Civic that I had previously. And so I thought, okay, well, let's take a look at these Volkswagens. And he said, man, I got these Passats. They're great, and they're diesels. And I didn't know it. I didn't know anything about diesel. People think it's funny because I set this diesel record, and that was kind of foisted upon us. But I bought the diesel because of the great gas mileage. And I bought the car originally because I wanted to do Uber and Lyft on the side. And I thought, this is a really nice car. It rides comfortably. So for the first few months that I had it, it was my daily driver to and from work. I did ride sharing on the side with it, and it rode like a grandma car. It had the post Dieselgate tune on it, and so it was a turd. It just had no power whatsoever. And then we had this great C2C reunion in Gulf Shores. And at that point, somebody had said, hey, in April, why don't we all meet in New York and then meet in California? Okay, so we all knew what was going on. And so me and Jason and we knew that we wanted to drive together, and so I had the Passat, and I knew that it loved to cruise at about 90 miles an hour. That car just settles in. So I thought, okay, if I do a little bit of work, we can get it to cruise a little bit higher. And so then I started building it specifically for that purpose. We did coilovers, we did brakes, sway bars, brake lines, stud conversion. everything we could to make the car handle and stop as it needed to. We then got it tuned. We got the transmission tuned, and really it was just a matter of, this is what I have. You know, had I had a Toyota Camry at that time, we'd be talking about the Toyota Camry record. That's really what it boils down to.
So I love the answer, and after the episode name actually is the same as, I'm disappointed you didn't wear this shirt I got you. After he set the record, I got his whole team shirts that said "Dirty Diesels Done Dirt Cheap," because it was Dieselgate. I had a Volkswagen TDI as well, and we had dirty diesels, and he made his even more dirty, and he did it on a budget because it was his daily driver.
That's right.
So the follow-up question is, what's it like to cannonball your daily driver or to daily drive your cannonball car?
Scary. Both ways. Scary because if something happens on the run, you lose your daily driver, right? Now, we did something special with it, which we weren't intending. Funny story. As we were coming into California, I get a text from Doug that said, if I'd have known that you were going to be so close to reaching our record, I wouldn't have spotted for you. So, you know, we weren't intending to be within under 30 hours.
A little competitive.
Yeah. So, but once you do that and you realize, oh my gosh, we kind of did something special here. You know, we have the overall record from Darien to Redondo.
Yes.
Okay. It's not a diesel record. It's the overall.
So you also have the diesel non-event record.
We also have the
Darien to
diesel non-event
Redondo.
record. So now, this is still my daily driver. I still get people who text me pictures and say, hey, I saw you on 480 today on my way to work, where I go and sit in a warehouse all day. And to people, it's a very special car, and it is to me too, but it is my daily driver. So at the time we did the run, I think I had 65,000 miles on it. We got done back in, dropped Mark off in Cleveland, and I ran around the country a little bit more after that. But after everything was said and done, I think I had like 75,000 miles on it. Well, now I just crossed 190,000 miles yesterday.
Holy cow!
So yeah, it's been across the country a few times since then. But it's bulletproof. I love it.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great. All right, we're going to go to a caller now. And if you'd like to be on the show, the call-in number again is 216-294-4124. Call in to be on live with us, 216-294-4124. Where else can you talk to two Cannonball record holders at once? Chris from Massachusetts has a call. Chris, you are on with Doug and Sean.
Hey, Chris.
Hello, Doug and Sean.
Good to hear you, buddy.
Do you know this scofflaw?
This is Mr. Clemens.
Oh.
This is the C to C to C.
C to C to C to C to C. I see.
Yes.
Do you see? I went to the eye doctor one time, and she asked me if I had been taking my eye. This is a true story.
Okay.
She asked me if I had been taking my eye vitamins. I said, no, I've been taking my C vitamins. She didn't find it funny.
Yes.
Anyway, Chris, what's up?
So the reason I felt I needed to call in is to circle back a little bit on the burden of proof.
Oh, boy.
The
question for you. Do you think Richard Rawlings did it?
I do.
Okay, continue.
Despite my previous comments in the chat that made your face go all red.
All right, go ahead.
So when Sean was getting ready to do his run, now we are a special breed. When we prep to do a run, we have a tendency to go all out. Some people don't do that. But when I saw the amount of prep work that Sean was putting into that car, I knew he was going to do something special.
Yeah.
And the last thing I wanted for him was for him to get to California with a ridiculous time and people say, well, he couldn't have possibly done that. It's just a Passat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went down there and verified their start time for them.
Yep.
Just so he wasn't going to have that issue because, you know, wouldn't want him to be the next Richard Rawlings.
Right.
My hair is not nearly.
I don't think Sean's in any danger of of that.
But the burden of proof should be high.
Yes,
Yeah.
sure. But who verifies
mean,
it? Who vets the proof? What is the acceptable standard? Who determines that? And how do those people determining it not become liable for everybody who attempts a record?
And that's the rub.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can just accept somebody saying, well, I did X. You need to be able to say, well, I did X, and here's how I proved it.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's very good. That's why Arnie and I have proof beyond a reasonable doubt. I guess my own mantra is you should have enough such that if it got subpoenaed, you would be convicted in a court of law that you did it. Because if you don't, then, who's to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks, Chris. Congrats on your run. I definitely verified your start as well. Chris, on his C2C2C run, followed us out of Manhattan.
I picked them up when they were on their way back to Cleveland, and you should have seen them at the fuel stop that I saw them at. Oh, they were miserable.
Oh, gosh.
We were happy guys.
Yeah, right.
That is a record I will never, ever try to beat.
No.
So kudos to you
Hey,
guys.
thanks, Chris.
Chris, would like to have you on the show sometime, too. So, oh, gosh. Thank you for calling in. All right.
Absolutely.
Have a good one, Chris. Boris asked, what was your diesel's range? What's the ideal range with your fuel cell? I know you had some troubles there, but what was the ideal range?
The ideal range was 1,000 miles. And that, in planning, 1,000 miles left room on the table for us to miss a fuel stop and pick one up later. So that's why we assumed that we could make 3, the last one being just inside the California border and coast into Portofino with, plenty of fuel on board if needed.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, you always have to leave room.
Yeah.
Do you, speaking of leaving room, you've left a lot of room in your glass. Do you need a refill?
I would love a refill from the peanut gallery.
Awesome. That would be great. Mason said that I might have to make you talk about cars and coffee.
So Mason is a great Cannonball enthusiast who lives in Maryland. And he invited me down to Cars and Coffee in Dulles, Virginia, right by Dulles Airport. And I'm sure it's not Dulles, Virginia. I don't know what the town is there, but it's right next to Dulles Airport. And it was a fantastic Cars and Coffee. I drove down, stayed the night with my sister who lives in Maryland, drove an hour over the next morning and met up with him. And it was funny because here we are, this group of lunatics that loves Cannonball and gets excited for anything Cannonball. Really, nobody there had any idea. There was a few. A gentleman in a BMW who followed me in, saw my Cannonball license plate, saw the Cannonball jacket I was wearing, and struck up some discussion. A couple of Volkswagen guys there, that was kind of cool, came over and talked to me a little bit. But there wasn't a whole lot of discussion. Well, after we left that Cars and Coffee, he said, hey, this one ends at 9. There's another one just across the river in Maryland that starts at 9 over there and goes to 11. So we drove over there. It only took about 20 minutes. And it was by the Capital Auto Club, a very prestigious car club in the D.C. area. And there was Lamborghinis there and Ferraris and everything else and your typical Cars and Coffee, showing. But we ran into a guy who said, hey, I know a guy that did this. Let me go grab him and I'm going to bring him over. So he comes over and his name is Mark. And he didn't actually do a Cannonball, but he did the one lap.
Okay. Yep.
And so he is friends with Brock Yates Jr. He ran the one lap with Brock Yates. He shared a story about how he was originally denied entry into it because he didn't have the prerequisites of a racing license or enough high-performance driver education to qualify, and he essentially pestered his way in and won the 1988 One Lap of America. So if you look that up, his name is Mark Johnson. His real name is Scott. It's either his real name is Scott or his real name is Mark, but it says Scott Mark Johnson. Wonderful guy, and he took pictures with us. He just had an absolute blast. And then there was these other guys that came up that knew him, who this one guy was like, hey, man, can I take a picture in your driver's seat? Now, this is my daily driver Passat that I haven't vacuumed in probably months, and I had just driven down from Ohio the night before, and it was not in showroom condition inside, the doors being closed. And I said, man, it's kind of filthy. He goes, I don't care, man. This car has history. So I took a picture of this kid in my car, and he was just so tickled, and that meant so much to me that he thought that much of my car. So that's what that whole Cars and Coffee was all about.
That's really cool.
And Mason is actually building a car to do a Cannonball at some point too, and he's doing it the right way.
My goal is to do the Cannonball one lap to kind of come full circle on Cannonball stuff. I know they're not even like related at this point, but I do plan to do that in the next year or two.
What does a Cannonball one lap look like?
You go to different tracks. It's like a 5-6 day experience, and you drive from track to track.
Yeah.
You have 3 laps, essentially a warm-up lap, a hot lap, and a cool-down lap to set your whatever fastest time you can, and then you go to the next track. You sleep in hotels and all that, no chase cars. It's a little more competitive now, as is everything. A lot of guys bring, higher pro drivers to do the hot lap stuff, so then they can say they won the one lap. I think is kind of dumb, But anyway, I'm sure in '88 it was.
He won it
maybe not quite like that.
In an '88, I think it was an '87 BMW M5, big heavy saloon.
Overall or his class?
Overall. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, now you have to have, like guys showing up in GT2. Well, we sold a GT2 RS to a guy who a brand new one to a guy who was doing one lap. I'm like, I don't know how you compete with that. The phone lines are open. We had some backlog there. So if you were waiting to get on or get through, you can call now. 216-294-4124 is a number to be on with myself and Sean. Let's see what question can we go to next. From Alvis Elliott, how common is stimulant usage during a Cannonball attempt? We try not to do cocaine, but yeah, I think
there was no cocaine in my car.
Right.
I can attest to that.
Okay. Rudy's World says. Then there was some debate about this. Rudy's World says we need to have a Rust Bucket Cannonball record. A mashup between the Cannonball and Lemons Rally, worse cars than the C2C Express. Let me tell you what, Rudy. I've done the C2C Express. It doesn't get much worse than that.
No, it does not.
If you would like to go worse than that, you are welcome to it. I don't think anybody is challenging that.
No, because the thing about the C2C Express was there was such a variety of cars. Yeah, you had the guys who built these phenomenal vehicles, but we all started out with these $3,000 Rust Buckets. And the car I was in with Claiborne and Ryan was a car he pulled out of his field next to his house and built specifically for that run. He put a 455 Pontiac engine in it, a 4-speed transmission, and we had a bad output shaft bearing on the transmission and could not go above 65 miles an hour. 49 plus hours across the country.
That's miserable.
You blew a transmission in Chicago, get a different car, and beat our time by over 5 hours.
After sleeping through the night.
Yeah, we were in the same car.
How many? But not only you guys, but the regulators, the team of cops in their 49 Buick or whatever, Bradley Young in his Shrekmobile.
Oh
I mean, there's been 50, 80, 100-hour runs, and this premise looks forward to that.
This premise has already been handled just in the routine of trying to get a car that old to that capability.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. What has surprised you the most during any of your Cannonball runs?
I guess for us was the fact that we could accomplish what we accomplished with a car that really should not have been anywhere close to that. I mean, so you mentioned the live stream that you guys had when you ran the AMG, and we watched that, and seeing the speeds that you guys ran and the time you ran, we never thought we would be anywhere within the ballpark of under 30 hours. So the biggest surprise for us was the fact that as we're going into California, Jason's freaking out going, man, we've got something here. We could do this. That's what it was for us.
So let's. I'm gonna go there now. So we did 27 hours, 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Pre-COVID. That's the. Disclaimer. I am really happy that all of these questions, nobody asked a thing about COVID runs, non-COVID runs, asterisks, whatever. And I feel like that is the general sentiment now. In fact, I've heard that so much lately when people said, "Oh, hey, meet Doug, he's a record holder." Oh, the one during COVID? I'm like, golly, yes, but no, both of them.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that wasn't a topic tonight, but I'm going to be that jerk and I'm going to make it a topic because it does matter, right? So we had 700 horsepower. We did 27 hours and 25 minutes. It took us 6 years. It took anybody 6 years to beat the previous record held by Ed at 2850.
Yeah.
And then in a span of 4 months, there was, we'll say 6 verified times faster than 27:25, and another 3, I think, in between ours and Ed. So Ed's record was beaten, 8 or 9 times during that time. So it's true from that data that there's a difference with no traffic.
Yes.
It's true that there was an advantage during COVID. I think it was about 2 to 3 hours based on our runs. Do you think there should be an asterisk on the COVID runs? Why or why not?
I have fully embraced the asterisk. So the short answer
I
is...
say, hey, if you're going to go out there at all, it's your own asterisk. So
the answer the answer is no. And the reason is this. You encounter what you encounter when you go on your run, okay? When Ed said 2850, he didn't think anybody else would ever come close to that because he didn't encounter construction, traffic jams, any police interaction, the weather was fine, and he accomplished 2850.
Mm-hmm.
And his thoughts were, man, this is what we encountered. He didn't deserve an asterisk because he didn't encounter all those things.
Right.
Well, when COVID happened, we never planned to go out and take advantage of COVID. Like I said previously, this was all planned in January when COVID was really not even a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so we just kept the date. I'd already taken the time off work. I'd already started building the car. I had to convince Jason, hey, listen, this is something we really need to go do because he was kind of hemming and hawing because of COVID. But we just kept the time and the date. And so, yes, the traffic was much lighter. Construction wasn't happening. There was a very big difference, but that was what we encountered. Now, will there be a time going forward when the conditions are the same or better? It's possible. I can't foresee it, but it's possible. Yeah. When it happened, it's funny because when it happened, everybody brought that up to us, and I was kind of offended by it. We just went out there and busted our hump and made this happen, and you're trying to tell me that it doesn't mean the same thing because of COVID. And so I was really defensive of that, and I said, no. We encountered more trucks, and we did, but it still wasn't the same.
I think the traffic out west was nearly the same as well.
Is that right?
It was for our run anyway. Ours was later, but so Dave Black, who was Ed's co-driver, made a spreadsheet talking about how many times you have to slow down and speed up for somebody going the speed limit, essentially like the 70 to 130 matrix.
Yeah. And
it was like 1,500 times.
Wow.
And he basically, Dave is a computer guy.
He's a brain.
He's brilliant. So he figured out essentially the horsepower advantage. So if you had 200 horsepower versus 700 horsepower, how much time that actually adds up to. So if it's 2 seconds difference in getting from 70 to 130 with a higher horsepower car during normal traffic patterns, that would make like an hour or an hour and a half difference. You just added it up, 2 seconds, 3 seconds times 1,500.
Sure.
And said, well, here's the difference in that horsepower. And his kind of theory was that, well, during COVID, you didn't have those slowdowns.
That's true.
You could maybe say you might have had 500 as opposed to 1,500, maybe even less. So the horsepower handicap effectively went away, and that's why it was, I guess we'll say, easier for the A8 guys to do what they did with a 130 mile an hour speed limit, and your top speed was around 130, 135?
132, yeah.
Okay. Is because you didn't need the massive horsepower and the high speeds
that's
in
true.
order to counteract the constant slowdowns to 70 miles an hour. So there's an advantage for sure. Does advantage mean asterisk? I don't know.
Yeah.
But what I told you, and I think what I stand by, is that there's no asterisk for COVID, but COVID kind of robbed us all of the significance of the run itself.
Sure.
Especially for us, because we lost our record and then had to go get it back, and now it doesn't mean as much because people are like, oh, you just did the COVID record. We're like, no, we had the record that it took 6 years to beat, and like that was a big deal. And now it's just, oh, you're one of the COVID records.
Yeah.
But I told Sean that, I said, instead of looking at it like you have an asterisk, look at it like COVID kind of took a little bit of the significance away from what you did, because what you did was special and significant no matter what. So let's say there was no COVID and you went out on that weekend that you planned to go, and let's take away the 2.5 hour advantage, and you did 31.
That'd be amazing.
That would be, in a sense, more impressive or more noteworthy, because less people would have done it during COVID, and it would have been a bigger deal on a relative aspect.
You want to go this upcoming weekend or what? No?
So it like, I don't think it diminishes anything you've done, and I don't think there should be an asterisk either, because again, when does the asterisk start or end, or do you put an asterisk for, there's people asking about, what about a non-fuel cell record, a stock record, or this record, or that record? Everything has an asterisk except the overall friggin' record. But like, you can't choose your conditions.
No.
You can't choose your circumstances. You didn't.
No.
You just went.
You just look at the amount of people who have said, I'd really like to do this, and then the amount of people that actually have, and you realize whether you do it in 28 hours and 30 minutes, 25 hours and 39 minutes, or you do it in 40 hours, right? It's rarefied air to show up at Red Ball or Goodwives and drive across the country to the Portofino in a vehicle that makes it the entire way, that you deserve your name in that list, regardless.
And you did it with 170 horsepower in a car that only went 132 miles an hour.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you actually have a third record. Sorry. So you have the diesel record, the Darien to LA, Portofino record. I think you also have the lowest horsepower record.
Wow. I never even thought about that.
Yeah. No. So I'm looking at the sub 32 hour times.
Okay.
Dodge Charger rental car, that's got to have more than 170 horsepower, maybe less torque. 2012 Honda Odyssey, those V6 have like 300. I think the only one, we've got Audi S6, 700 horsepower, Ford Mustang, 460 horsepower, BMW M5 Competition, like 700 horsepower, another Audi S8 Plus, 800 horsepower, E63S AMG, Cadillac ATS that Yummy did. That was, but those are 300 something. Yeah. And then Volkswagen Passat,
right
up there with all these heavy hitters. CL55 AMG, Chevrolet Corvette, Audi S8. The next one that's anywhere near probably your horsepower is the next diesel record, which was Romy and Seth in an Audi A4 3-liter diesel,
which has still got to be 300 horsepower.
I don't know.
All-wheel drive.
Yeah, I don't know what that one is, but yeah.
Yeah,
if it's the same engine that was in my Touareg, then it was, it's like 280, 250, something like that. So, yeah, so that's an accomplishment in and of itself.
Right, and it's all, it's this post-Dieselgate, tuned down engine that we kind of livened up a little bit and had a lot of fun with, and Jason and I took that thing afterwards, and we drove right to the front door of Volkswagen, because we were trying to get a little bit of a pat on the back from them. Hey, look what we did with your car,
Yeah.
But because of the whole Volkswagen TDI scandal, they didn't want nothing to do with it. So we drove there, right to the factory where it was made. Took pictures right on their front doorstep and everything, and it was a lot of fun.
I love that you did that.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Here's a good one from Orani first. Do you think the Chevy SS is a Cannonball car?
The Chevy, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. 4-door V8, LS engine, rear-wheel drive. Yeah.
Yeah. Sort of looks like a cop car.
Yeah. Unrecognizable to most people.
Before I met Arnie, that was one of my top considerations.
Yeah.
I didn't like it because it was aluminum, and aluminum doesn't have a proper ground plane for a CB radio for like really, really good range. But nobody uses CBs anymore anyway.
So hold on. The SS, the entire body is aluminum?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I wanted to do in a Caprice PPV because that was steel. But again, who cares about CB anymore? So yeah, Chevy SS would be great. And if you can get one of the import a Holden one that's essentially the Z06. It has the Z06, the LS7 and the Z06 brakes and all that. Friggin' game over. Yeah, I think that would be the best American car to do it in.
Absolutely.
From Thor 5, how many people were in the car?
3.
What performance mods have been done to the Volkswagen?
It was tuned. I mean, an electronic tune, basically where we bought a tune from a company. I uploaded my factory files from my computer to them. They modified them, emailed them back. I uploaded them to the car. That's really about it as far as performance mods.
Sure. How do you prepare mentally and physically for the run?
Man, this could be answered 3 different ways because we had 3 different people in the car. For me, physically, it was you abstain from caffeine for 2 to 3 weeks beforehand. That way, any kind of little bit of stimulant you get, whether it's the coffee beans or the 5-hour energy or whatever it is, that affects you a whole lot greater. You're more alert. Really, that was about it. I mean, I worked until the day before we left, so I couldn't take a whole lot of time off and get my, sleep schedule in line. What we did in the car was we had 2 drivers, me and Jason, and Mark was our full-time spotter, who allowed me and Jason to kind of rotate back and forth on taking time off. And then Mark was able to hop in the back and take some rest as well. So having 3 people is really ideal because you alleviate that constantly being on. You're allowed to get that rest. So that's really about it.
In one of I think it was in Brock Gates' book, Cannonball.
Yeah.
One of the guys said the best way to prepare for it is to go out and sit in your car for 30 hours doing nothing. And if you can do that, then you can do a cannonball.
Yeah, I remember that.
I think that's the stupidest thing that's ever been said.
Why?
Because you have no stimulation when you're sitting in a car. I fall asleep driving at the speed limit.
Yeah.
I have to speed for my own safety because I am bored at 70 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And when my brain stops functioning, I fall asleep.
Interesting.
I've not gotten to use that excuse yet for a cop, but it absolutely is 100% true.
Yeah.
But you're in a sense, you're stimulated, you're hyper-focused the entire run.
That's true,
cannot, I am not a hypochondriac. What's the thing where you fall asleep at, anywhere? Narcissistic? A lot of people have told me I'm narcissistic. I think that's it. I'll fall asleep in church. I can fall asleep anywhere. Yeah. I fall asleep immediately when we're done our runs, but I am awake and alert for the whole run. It's something different psychologically that kicks in.
Yeah, Jason and I, neither of us slept. Now, Mark, he was sawing logs in the back seat quite a bit. I mean, but he wasn't driving, so he had a lot going on, and it was wearing him out, being on Facebook and all that. No, I'm just kidding. But Jason and I, we were on point the whole time until we got there. And in fact, that night when we arrived at the Portofino, this was just an amazing weekend because of so many people who ran that we didn't even know. So there was us and there was Yummy who ran, and we knew him. He arrived 45 minutes after we did, so we saw him arrive. And then we went back to the hotel, and we're all having, some Coors, celebrating our victory, this thing that we just did. And we get a call, or a text that says, hey, there's another team that's coming in that might break the record. Can you verify them, coming in? I was so spent. I never saw those guys come in. I don't know if they arrived or not. It could be all a myth to me. But Jason and Mark went down and verified that. So, when we were doing the run, we were on point the whole time.
Yeah.
Once we were done, it was like the bottom let out and you just slept.
Yep. Yeah. All right. I have 4 more questions I want to get through tonight. I would like some more tequila in order to make it through them. Benjamin, who is in the portable toilet rental business, asked, at what points did you go, shoot, we could beat the record?
Would you mind if I, at this point, invited my co-driver up to answer that question?
Yes.
Because it was him who actually said those exact words.
While he comes, though, come on, co-driver. So this guy's in the portable toilet rental business. I think there might be some synergy between his business and Cannonballing. Everybody talks about mobile refueling. Why not? Let's talk mobile pooping, right? If we could have a poop truck.
Well, I'll pose this question to you,
could-
Doug. What was your waste management situation on your run?
Cheese.
Okay. All right. Ours was just simply fuel stops, take care of business. So
Yeah, that was it. But if you got to go number 2,
Yeah.
friggin' A.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So at the microphone right now is Jason Atkins. Jason was my co-driver on the 2830 run. We've also done other runs, including the Southern Classic, where we race from Atlanta to Texarkana and back to see how fast we can go get some Coors beer, just like they did in the movie Smokey and the Bandit. So we have a great affinity for one another, and we do well in a car together. So when we were coming into California, it was Jason who said this exact thing, that, man, we're getting ready to do something special. So repeat that question for him.
At what points did you go, shoot, we could beat the record? I don't know where he's from, so I was just picking a random accent.
I'm from a small town called Newark, Ohio. I would say it's somewhere around Bakersfield when I took back over. And with Cannonball, it's almost like a rolling equation. You never know where you're at. But once I took place in Bakersfield, we knew that we almost had an hour left of time that we could spend on the side of the road or broke down. We had watched our averages across the country. We knew we'd carried almost 105 across the country, and then we hit the mountains, and it slowed us down. And I'm in the back seat having almost a panic attack. I had spent hours trying to get us up to speed, get a great rolling average, and next thing I know, we hit the mountains. And when we come back out of Utah, we realized that we still had a great average. You know, we had spent hours below what we needed to be, but then when we got out of Utah, we got back into lower atmosphere. The Passat picked back up. At that point, we were able to get back some speed, and we were starting to make it back up time. And when I took back over, I was wondering if we could do it or not. So at that point, like you and Arnie on your Southern run, I didn't worry so much about spotting as much as the time.
Yeah.
And
how did you feel when you realized, like, I think we got this?
Pride. I never thought we would beat any record. It's all about your personal goals. And your personal goals is what's most important in a cannonball. When you beat your personal goals, you're proud of it. When you beat the record of someone that you admire, that's something that you take home and tell your friends about, you tell your family about. You might even cry about it when you get home and no one that has a manly or, a machismo about them is watching you. You might sit down and cry for a minute because you've watched these people do this, and next thing you know, you've just elapsed their time in a fucking Passat.
Right.
And next thing you know, people are asking you, what would it take to beat your diesel time? You would have to build a diesel that could beat Ed Bullion's AMG Mercedes.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
At this point, if you want the diesel record, you need a diesel that can outrun an AMG Mercedes.
Yep.
That's where it sits.
Yeah. Well, you need a team. That's a lot of it. It's not the car. It's a lot of it. The team. Maybe everything. Mark Sapinski asked, thank you, Jason. Any lesser-known Cannonball records that you'd be interested in trying to beat? We already beat a lesser-known record. Heyo.
Didn't even know I was doing it.
Alternative fuel.
Yeah, I mean,
Any other ones?
so I mean, things pop up all the time that you're like, man, that's really interesting. I'd love to give that a shot. You know, the 3-wheel record or the motorcycle record, the electric car record. You know, I feel like now that I'm 42 years old, the electric car record, I could get down with stopping 27 times and having a nap. I mean, let's just be honest.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Other than that, no. There's, you know, for me, it's going the other direction. I constantly think about what would it take to take the overall record, Doug. I think about it all the time, but you know, it's not realistic at this point. But you know, I think about it.
Yeah.
You know,
We all do all the time.
right?
Well, even once you have the record, you sit around fantasizing about what's the ultimate run, what's the ultimate car, and that's what gets us into it in the first place. It's
Sure.
that constant pursuit, and that's what Ed always talks about is the trying to overcome a challenge.
Yeah.
What was it like to see the E63 wreck? So I spotted for Sean across Ohio in the Corvette.
Yeah.
Ran across the whole state. Arnie ran the whole state of Illinois in the E63, the record car. Arnie then pulled over to the side of the road to film them going by, and a trucker who fell asleep ran into the back of the car. Mark saw it through the binoculars. You, I guess, saw it but didn't know what was happening. What was it like to come up on that scene in the middle of your run?
It was surreal, I guess is the best way to explain it, is that we didn't know what we were looking at. You know, I remember it as coming up and seeing a truck perpendicular to the roadway, a semi perpendicular to the roadway, basically spanning from the westbound lanes to the eastbound lanes, and Arnie's car kind of hobbling along across all 4 lanes of the road over to the median. Because the impact had already happened, he had already gotten back in the car and was trying to drive over to where the truck driver was to get his car out of the road. All of the debris was still on the road. His guys were on the other side of the, whatever that is, the guardrail. Excuse me. And we really didn't know what we were seeing. Now, when it comes to Cannonball, there's nothing worse than an accident, because the safety record of cannonballing is impeccable. And so when we saw this, the first thought that crossed our mind is oh my gosh, we did something that caused this to happen. Maybe we should just shut it down at this point. And so as we pulled up to the scene, Arnie had pulled over to the middle of the median and had said to us, he literally hopped out of his car and just said, "Go, go, go."
I love watching the video of that.
That was very hard to do.
Not of the wreck, but of him,
Yeah.
like, just go get it.
It really
Go get it.
I'll never get that image out of my mind. And it was very hard to continue. And we had conversation in the car for multiple hours after that, because it took about 3 hours before he texted us and let us know what had actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
So not only is we're on a glimpse feed, which is a GPS feed that people can follow us. He's on that same glimpse feed, so we can see where he was when he was spotting for us. So after that fact, I watched him for 3.5 hours, basically pacing back and forth on this median, you know, dealing with the tow truck driver and the insurance and the police and all this stuff. And finally, 3.5 hours later, he texted us and let us know, hey, look, you know, we were stopped. We were out of the car. Truck driver fell asleep, ran into us, which was a huge relief for all of us.
Yeah.
But there was very serious conversation about we should probably just stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you didn't.
Yeah.
The last question, I don't know if this has an answer. Overton Automotive Brokers and many others and many media people have asked, 24 hours or bust?
You know, that's another one of those things where I think about quite a bit. I think 24 hours is a dangerous benchmark that if somebody shoots for, bad things are going to happen.
Sure. I think it's one of those things where people have seen the records fall so much in a short period of time, aided by COVID,
Yeah.
that they think that it just will continue to happen. And what we're really seeing is the amount of time the records are getting beat by compressed.
Yeah.
And we're getting closer and closer to that threshold. I think, and I told everybody who asked me that question in interviews, 24 hours was possible during the early days of COVID when there was no traffic. Absolutely it was. I don't think it's possible now. Somebody may prove me wrong. I don't think it's possible for me.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to try it.
No.
So, well, with that cliffhanger, I guess, the 24 hours will never be achieved. Some said 30 never would be. This podcast is also brought to you by Celebrity Machines, which is a proud sponsor of SwitchCast. Celebrity Machines offers more than 250 different screen-accurate license plates as they appeared in movies and TV shows like Fast and the Furious, The Office. This is one of my favorite ones. Big William Hung fan. Ghostbusters, A Fast and the Furious, Breaking Bad, and so many more. Celebrity Machines also makes our dealer insert plates as well as our commemorative 2539 plates from our record run. Visit celebritymachines.com for more info and use promo code SwitchCast to get a whopping 25.39% discount at checkout. That's right. celebritymachines.com, promo code SwitchCast. The props and flops for this week. All right, the flop of the week is a personal vendetta. I tried to buy a Porsche this week from Bentley of Indianapolis. Now, in this crazy market, we can't expect dealers to negotiate much, if at all. We are firm on some of our asking prices, but we still negotiate some. I get that, but it's all about the attitude. This dealer at a 2010 911 advertised for $85,000, but in the fine print, it stated that the price included a $1,000 discount if you financed it through the dealer, and the cash price was $1,000 more. So you really had to pay $86,000 for a car advertised at $85,000. I talked to two different managers and a salesman, played the usual dealer games, went around everybody, 2 days of negotiation, basically trying to beg this dealer to sell me the car for their advertised price, and they refuse. That's their prerogative, but I think it's kind of lame. And the only other time I've seen that advertising practice was at a buy here, pay here, shady ghetto used car dealership on the East Coast. So is it legal? Well, it depends on the state. Indiana has very vague rules about deceptive advertising practices, but our rules in Ohio would make this clearly illegal. They are as follows, quote, if a rebate, discount, or price reduction is not available to all consumers, the amount may not be subtracted to arrive at an advertised price. So whatever, they sold the car to somebody else is what it is. The prop of the week goes to a car and its unknown owner. It is was a well set up Shelby GT500 that I saw in Cars and Bids. It was finished in a gorgeous deep impact blue metallic, and the owner had removed the stripes and added the KR hood, which gave it just a really good look. He also added tons of performance upgrades. Ford 5.8 liter fully built long block from L&N engines, Slocco Racing ported heads, Kenny Bell 3.5 liter supercharger, American Racing race headers, SCT flash tuner, carbon drive shaft, center force clutch, and on and on. It was a perfect setup. But with all that horsepower, not surprisingly, the Carfax showed a prior accident. Predictably, it's noted as a single vehicle incident, but what Carfax doesn't say about this Mustang accident is how many pedestrians were involved. And that's, of course, what the internet really wants to know. I kid. That car was really awesome. Kudos to the seller on a perfect setup, and congrats to the new owner on a heck of a deal. Sean, thank you for being on tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Where can people find you on the internet or follow your shenanigans and adventures?
Sure. So on Instagram, we've got two setups. We got Road Trip West. You can look up there, or SeanGPetr.com, Sean G. Petr, or on Facebook, Sean Petr as well.
Gotcha. Thank you for being on. Well, thank you again to my co-host, Sean Petr. Our sponsors, GT Vault, Boxcast, Switchcars, Celebrity Machines, and Stephen Holm Woodworking, who made this awesome desk for us. Thank you to our producer and call screener, Ethan Huffenagel. Our bumper music is provided by Emily and Ivory. You can stream the full album on Spotify or SoundCloud. This episode will be available Friday in audio format on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. Look up SwitchCast. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next Wednesday at 8 p.m. with a new co-host, and we'll look forward to answering your automotive questions to help you on the drive of your